Welcome to Streaming News Network by Claude McDaniel. News without the hype and biased reporting. Please like and subscribe.
This is Claude McDaniel with Streaming News Network. New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill has announced a significant increase in state funding for legal services aimed at assisting immigrants facing deportation proceedings. According to the governor, the state will add $12 million to its Detention Deportation Defense Initiative, bringing total funding for the program to more than $20 million. New Rapid Legal Response Initiative designed to expand emergency immigration legal assistance across the state. The governor said the programs are intended to help ensure individuals facing removal proceedings receive due process under the law and have access to legal representation. The announcement comes amid ongoing tensions surrounding immigration enforcement activities at the Delaney Hall Detention Facility in Newark. In recent weeks, demonstrations outside the facility have led to confrontations between protesters and law enforcement officers. Federal officials have reported several arrests connected to those incidents. The funding increase has sparked criticism from some conservative leaders and residents, who argue taxpayer dollars should instead be directed toward issues such as infrastructure, education, and property tax relief. Supporters, however, maintain the programs are necessary to protect legal rights and provide access to the court system for those facing deportation. This is Claude McDaniel for Streaming News Network. Indiana officials are drawing national attention after a recent enforcement initiative uncovered hundreds of commercial drivers with licensing or documentation concerns during inspections at state weigh stations. According to state officials, 283 drivers were flagged over a 90-day period as part of a broader effort to review commercial trucking activity and ensure compliance with commercial driver's license requirements. Authorities reported that many of the drivers held licenses issued by other states, including New York and California. Indiana leaders have argued that differences in licensing policies between states can create challenges for consistent enforcement across the trucking industry. State officials say the initiative is focused on highway safety and ensuring commercial drivers meet federal requirements for lawful presence, work authorization, and licensing eligibility. As part of the effort, Indiana recently revoked nearly 1,800 commercial licenses issued under non-domiciled licensing provisions following changes to state regulations and verification standards. Officials say the updated policies are intended to strengthen identity and work authorization checks and improve coordination with federal databases. However, questions remain about the legal outcomes for many of the drivers identified during the inspections, as authorities have not publicly detailed the disposition of every case. This is Claude McDaniel for Streaming News Network. The National Football League has declined a request for Commissioner Roger Goodell to testify before a congressional hearing next week examining sports broadcasting and the growing role of streaming services. In a letter to Representative Jim Jordan's House Judiciary Committee, the league's chief legal officer stated that the NFL remains committed to traditional broadcast television, despite expanding partnerships with streaming platforms. League officials argued that streaming has increased audience reach and has not reduced access to games carried on broadcast networks. At the center of the debate is the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, which allows professional sports leagues to negotiate television rights collectively. Lawmakers are now examining whether that decades-old antitrust exemption should apply to modern streaming platforms such as Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube. The NFL has also faced scrutiny from federal regulators and lawmakers over its media practices. Earlier this year, federal agencies launched reviews of the league's broadcasting arrangements, while several members of Congress proposed measures aimed at preserving free access to game broadcasts for local fans. Despite repeated invitations to testify publicly, NFL representatives have largely addressed concerns through written responses and private meetings with government officials. The House hearing is expected to move forward on June 10 without Goodell's appearance. This is Claude McDaniel for Streaming News Network. A new political dispute is unfolding over allegations of fraud within Minnesota's public assistance programs, with Vice President J.D. Vance criticizing state officials over access to data used to measure fraud rates. The controversy began during a congressional hearing when Minnesota Representative Angie Craig stated that the state's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program fraud rate stands at approximately 1.6%. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins challenged that figure, arguing that federal officials have been unable to independently verify the data because Minnesota has not provided full access to certain records. Vice President Vance later questioned why state officials would resist additional audits if fraud levels are as low as reported, calling for greater transparency and oversight. The debate comes amid broader concerns about fraud prevention in publicly funded programs. Federal and state officials have been examining Minnesota's benefit systems following several high-profile investigations, including the Feeding Our Future case, one of the largest alleged fraud schemes involving federally funded child nutrition programs. Minnesota officials, however, have pushed back against federal demands for additional verification measures, arguing that some proposed requirements could create unnecessary burdens for eligible recipients. The dispute is expected to remain a key issue as lawmakers continue debating program oversight, accountability, and fraud prevention efforts. This is J. Claude McDaniel for Streaming News Network. A Virginia man convicted of orchestrating a deadly murder plot against his wife has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Brendan Banfield, a former Internal Revenue Service law enforcement officer, was found guilty in the deaths of his wife, Christine Banfield, and Joseph Ryan, a man prosecutors said was lured to the family's home as part of an elaborate scheme. Authorities say Banfield initially claimed he discovered Ryan attacking his wife inside the home in February of 2023. However, prosecutors argued that Banfield and the family's au pair, Juliana Perez Magalhaes, planned the killings in an effort to remove Christine Banfield from the picture. During sentencing, the judge described Banfield's actions as calculated and cruel, noting that the couple's 4-year-old daughter was present in the home during the murders. Testimony revealed that Banfield and Magalhaes allegedly used a fake online identity to lure Ryan to the residence, where prosecutors said the killings were staged to resemble a confrontation with an intruder. Magalhaes later pleaded guilty to manslaughter and testified against Banfield. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison. This is J. Claude McDaniel of Streaming News Network. An Arkansas State Police trooper has resigned after court filings in an ongoing divorce and child custody case revealed a series of alleged racist, sexist, and homophobic text messages sent over several years. The documents were filed by the trooper's estranged wife, Alana Kennedy, who is seeking sole custody of the couple's 2 children. In her court filings, she expressed concerns that her former husband's views could negatively influence the children. The filings include numerous screenshots of messages allegedly sent by Michael Austin Kennedy, some containing racial slurs, derogatory comments about women, and offensive language targeting members of the LGBTQ community. Court records also allege that some messages referenced arrests involving individuals from minority backgrounds. In response, Kennedy acknowledged sending the messages and, through his attorney, accepted responsibility for the language used. The filing states that he deeply regrets the remarks, describes them as unacceptable, and says they do not reflect his current values. The controversy emerged during divorce proceedings that began after the couple separated earlier this year. The custody dispute remains ongoing in Arkansas Family Court. This is J. Claude McDaniel with Streaming News Network. A large-scale immigration and identity fraud investigation in South Carolina has resulted in dozens of detentions and multiple criminal charges following a raid at a metal casting company in Abbeville County. Federal immigration authorities detained 48 workers during an enforcement operation at Bernstein Von Seelen Precision Castings. Officials say the action followed a 2-year investigation into the alleged use of fraudulent identity documents. State prosecutors also announced charges against 6 individuals, including the company's plant manager and human resources director. Authorities allege the suspects participated in a scheme involving identity theft and the creation or use of fraudulent documents to obtain employment. South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson said the investigation was focused on organized identity fraud rather than workers seeking employment. He described the case as a broader conspiracy involving stolen identities and counterfeit government documents. Federal officials say they are now reviewing the immigration status of the detained workers. According to investigators, some individuals had previous encounters with immigration authorities, while others had reportedly been subject to prior deportation orders. The criminal cases remain pending as both state and federal investigations continue. This is J. Claude McDaniel with Streaming News Network. Veteran character actor James Handy has died following a fatal stabbing at a residence in the Tarzana area of Los Angeles. According to investigators, the 81-year-old actor was discovered Wednesday morning suffering from a stab wound to the chest outside a home. He was transported to a nearby hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. Police arrested 44-year-old Michael Gledhill in connection with the killing. Authorities say Gledhill allegedly called emergency dispatchers before officers arrived and made statements indicating responsibility for the attack. Investigators report that Gledhill lived at the residence with his mother, who was identified as Handy's girlfriend. When officers arrived at the scene, authorities say the suspect approached them and acknowledged he was the individual they were seeking. Gledhill was booked on a murder charge, and authorities have not yet disclosed a possible motive. Handy appeared in more than 100 film and television productions during a career spanning 5 decades, with credits including Top Gun, Maverick, Jumanji, and Arachnophobia. This is Claude McDaniel with Streaming News Network. An Arkansas judge has dismissed a second-degree murder charge against Aaron Spencer, a Republican candidate for sheriff who admitted to fatally shooting a man accused of sexually abusing his teenage daughter. The ruling comes just weeks before Spencer was scheduled to stand trial and months after he won his party's nomination for sheriff in Lonoke County. Special Circuit Court Judge Ralph Wilson Jr. dismissed the case after finding that law enforcement mishandled potentially critical evidence. According to court records, a dash camera recovered from the victim's vehicle may have contained video and audio relevant to the shooting. However, investigators failed to properly preserve the device, and a memory card believed to be inside the camera was later reported missing. Spencer shot and killed 67-year-old Michael Fossler in 2024 after locating his daughter in a vehicle Fossler was driving. Fossler was out on bond at the time, facing multiple charges involving alleged sexual offenses against the girl. Prosecutors argued the shooting was premeditated, while Spencer maintained he acted to protect his child. Following the ruling, Spencer said he is focusing on his family and continuing his campaign for sheriff, where he has pledged to strengthen efforts against crimes involving children.
Thank you for listening to Streaming News Network videos and shorts. Please like and subscribe to our news channel.